guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Janelle, and today I'm doing a video that I meant to film like a long time ago. So the first time I was gonna do this was back in March, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do like a spring wrap up, everything I read this spring. Didn't film that. Then I was like, okay, I can do like May, and like it still kind of counts as like a spring wrap up. Didn't film that either, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it for June. We're just gonna do like the mid-year freak out book tags, do everything I read this first 6 months. Still didn't film that, so we're filming that video now. So I've read like too many books to do like literally every single book that I've read like this entire year, but I am gonna do just every book that I read this summer. So I'm counting from June to July and just filming those, but there's still 27 of them, so I'll be just gonna give like a little bit about the book and then like the rating and then do the next one, but we're gonna try to go through it kind of fast because 27 is gonna take a really long time to get through. There's not really an order to how I do them. I kind of just did like in the way that I read them, and then like if they're a part of a series I just put those together, that way it's not like all over the place. But yeah, for the most part it's just like kind of random. So let's get into all the books that I read. I worked at a library like this entire summer, so most of the books I got I just like checked out, so I don't actually have them, but I actually had I think a surprisingly good like reading period. Like there were some that were kind of like but for the most part I enjoyed most of the books that I ended up reading this summer. So the first book I read was Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. So this one I gave it 4.5 stars, and if you see me looking down it's because I have my notes for like what I want to say for each one. But this one was a Rivals to Lovers, so it's basically a brain scientist. The girl's a brain scientist, and then this guy is like an engineer, and they're basically working together for NASA. I really didn't expect to like it. I actually really loved it. Like, I think my favorite is still The Love Hypothesis, but this one was just like a really like enjoyable book to read, and it was actually surprisingly funny. That being said though, it was kind of predictable. For most of her books kind of follows like the same like structure, so I knew what was gonna happen because of like the way that she wrote it, but like I said, it was still really fun to read even regardless of that. The next book I read was The Decoy Girlfriend by Lily Vale. It was really good, but the ending just kind of let me down a bit. So this one is about a girl who's like pretty much a dead ringer doppelganger for like a certain celebrity. And so she goes out and she like pretends to be that celebrity. She's done it a couple times, but that night she gets caught. The celebrity that she was pretending to be actually comes, finds her, and is like, hey, you know, if you want to like pay me back for doing all this, I want you to actually pretend to be me for real. That way I can go and like have my alone time and not have to be in the public eye and everything. However, the boyfriend, when he's fake dating the doppelganger, he finds out like, oh my god, like we actually like really do like each other. Chemistry and everything between them was amazing, and it was very enjoyable. It's just kind of like the third act, then it went a little bit downhill from there, and I just wanted more from the ending that didn't really go there, but for the most part I still really did like it. After that one I read The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. This one was also a little bit disappointing because I really loved The Spanish Love Deception, and when I like originally started reading it I wanted to read this one first. This was the first one I saw, and then I was like, okay, well, Spanish Love Deception comes out first, so let me just read that one as like a little backstory, and then like it'll be, if they have like a cameo or something in this one, I'll like be able to expect it. Really liked it. I was like, oh my god, this is the one that I wanted to read, so like I like it even more. But it kind of didn't live up to the Spanish Love Deception. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as I kind of thought it would be. So this one was a fake proximity and fake dating book. So basically, Rosie is Lena's best friend from the first book. She just quit her job to go be a full-time romance writer, but her apartment basically like collapsed in on itself, and so she didn't have anywhere to go. So Lena was out on vacation with her husband, so she's like, okay, like I'm just gonna go stay at your place. But what she didn't know is that Lena had already told her cousin Lucas that he could go like live in her place while she was gone. So Rosie goes, she runs into Lucas, and then him being like a nice guy, he's like, oh, like, it's fine, like, you can stay here. And, like, he found out she was a writer, and then she was like, I have zero inspiration, like, I don't know what to write for this next book. And he's like, you know what, like, I'll take you on, like, these little fake dates, and then you can just see if you can get some experience from there. It was a really cute book. I just feel like there were certain moments where there was a lot of miscommunication and just, like, self-sabotaging, and I normally don't mind it in a book. Like, it's kind of relatable most of the time, but this one just had so much of it that I was just kind of, like, passing some pages, like, okay, like, we get it, like, let's just move on. Then, after that one, I started the Summer I Turned Pretty series. So I read the first one and the second one, so The Summer I Turned Pretty and then It's Not Summer Without You. I gave them both 3.5 stars because I'd heard like mixed opinions about the books, and they were like, some people were like, they're great, like you have to read them, other people were like, like they're fine, you know. So I decided to just watch the show, and based on that, like I'd see like if I wanted to like go and actually read it. So I watched the first season and it was amazing, like I loved the show. And so I tried to read the whole series before season 2 came out, and I did, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping. Like the first and the second book were okay. There's not really a way to like talk about these without like spoiling what happens in the series, but they were both good. They just weren't as good as I was expecting. And then the third book, We'll Always Have Summer, I gave that one 2 stars because that one just like it was like hate reading that one. It kind of really annoyed me because there's something that happens in the very beginning of the book, and the whole book kind of focuses on that like one thing, which to me was really annoying because I didn't necessarily like that thing. So I didn't really like that one. But all I'm gonna say about that is that I am a Team Conrad girl through and through, and nobody's going to change my mind. The next one is called The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one was so beautiful. I would give this infinite stars if I could. It was just such a pretty book to read. So this one is about a girl who can see ghosts. Her family like runs a funeral home, which is why she can like see ghosts. When she gets back to the funeral home, she sees a ghost there, and she'd been ignoring most of them since she moved away from home. But now that she was back, she's like, you know, I kind of like, let me just see like what he needs. Like, let me see if I can help. I normally don't like supernatural, like paranormal kind of books, but this one wasn't necessarily like super like that kind of vibe. It was just so like, it was a very emotional book because it managed to like talk about both love and grief in like such a pretty way. Like it was gorgeous. I cried. It was everything. The next one I read was The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This one, I hate to say it, but it was probably the biggest disappointment of the summer. For a while, I've been seeing this and I was like, you know, it sounds really good, like I want to get it, and then I did, and it just wasn't as good as it sounded. General like basis of it is that they share an apartment, but they've never met because Tiffany works the morning shift and then Leon works the night shift, so they never actually have to interact. So what they do is they just like pass notes to each other, and then from there they kind of like start to get to know each other better and like build that connection, right? And I was like, oh, that sounds like really interesting, like I think that'll be a great book. But it was kind of like slow, like really slow at the beginning to pick up, and I was actually debating like, should I DNF it or just like keep going. So it was, I mean, this one was kind of expensive, so I like just kept reading anyways. But it was just like, I don't know, I wanted it to be more like better, I guess. I don't really know how to say it. Just like, it was good, but it wasn't necessarily memorable. It's not a bad book to read, it's just not something that I would be like in a rush to read again, or like to tell anybody else to read. The next one was another one that, again, it wasn't bad, just wasn't necessarily memorable. So this one is called Best Served Hot by Amanda Elliott. There's like a food influencer, and then there's this guy who's like a food like critic and like writes about it like in the newspaper. And so they basically meet at like a convention and they get into like a little like argument, but it's recorded and it goes online. And so in order to like kind of like fix it and jerk off like the views and everything, they end up working together. So they go like review the same restaurants, but then write about it separately and just like in their own takes. And it was cute, but again, it just wasn't like anything like super special. However, this next one was another masterpiece. It's called The Show for Two by, I really hope I don't butcher her name, Tashi Bouillon, I think is how you say it. But this one, just for starters, it was inspired by Tom Holland going over to an American high school, like undercover, to play Spider-Man. And so he actually went undercover to the author's school, and so that's why she wrote the book about it. But the same thing kind of happened in the book. The only difference is, like, the main character is nothing like Tom Holland. But it's still, like, a celebrity went undercover to the school to, like, try to get a sense of, like, what American high school is like. I read it all in one sitting, and I think what really made it was the main character was just so, like, she was really complex, but at the same time, she was just so easily relatable. Like, the whole story, it was just, like, so interesting. It was, like, a very, like, vulnerable kind of writing, like, still YA, not, like, anything, like, deep and, like, super, like, cutthroat or anything like that. But it was just still very, like, like I said, very relatable and like just a heartwarming read. And the next one I read is one, it's actually a reread. So this one is Tequila Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. This one is beautiful, one of my favorite ones. I read this one, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. It's as gorgeous as it was the first time, and it was like even on brand because The Little Mermaid came out. It's an enemies to lovers retelling of The Little Mermaid, but it's like a darker retelling with sirens. The next one was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This one I read because everybody had been talking about it on Book Talk for a while, and I was like, you know what, let me just finally like try it, see if I like it. And it was so much better than I thought it could be. I gave this one 5 stars because I was literally like just immediately hooked from like the whole thing. So this one tells the story of a girl named Pippa, and she basically works with her friend Robbie to solve a closed case of or that's spoiler. It tells a story of a girl named Pippa who, for her class project, decides to investigate a closed murder case, and so she works with the alleged killer's brother to solve the case of the girl that the brother allegedly killed. I don't know if that really makes sense, but the main character herself, Pippa, there was just something about her. She was just a very likable main character, which I feel like is very like unpopular because a lot of people say that they don't really like Pippa, but me personally, I think she was like, I loved her. Then, oh my god, okay, the next one is called Love from Scratch by Caitlin Hill. This one is probably the best, it's not even probably, this is the best book that I read this entire summer. I love this book. It's kind of like Rivals to Lovers, but there's basically this intern. So she's a marketing intern, her name is Reese, and then there's a cooking intern, and his name is Benny. The network they're on has like a bunch of different shows, but one day, one of the shows, they're like missing the people that they need. So they're like, hey, let's put like Reese and Benny there, and let's just like throw them on the show, see if it works, like we'll just hope that it gets a good rating. They go viral, and then they basically become like a little like recurring show to like keep up the views. But yeah, but this was just so, it was such a like enjoyable read. Like I did not put it down. I was desperate to finish it like from the moment that I started because it was just like I just wanted more and more and more. But then I know like the second that I did finish the book, I was so upset because I was like, I want a sequel. There's not really need to it, but I just love Reese and Benny's dynamic so much that I really want a second book. But yeah, this one, it was like everything that I wanted and more. It had one of my favorite love decorations. Like I read a lot of romance, and like, you know, they always have the grand gesture, but this one was actually really cute. Like I loved this one, and kind of also reminded me of A Show for Two. If you like liked that one or you like this one, then you're probably gonna like the other one. But yeah, again, that was just like literally the best book that I read this whole summer. Then, because I liked this book so much, I went and read Caitlin Hill's new book called Not Here to Stay Friends. And so this one, I didn't love it as much as I loved Love from Scratch, but it was still like really good. So I gave this one 4.5 stars, and this one is a childhood best friends to lovers. So there's these 2 best friends, and they like grew up together, but then the guy, he moves away. So they had this like whole plan to like spend the whole summer, like do all this together, but then his dad tells him like, hey, you're gonna go intern for this reality show that I'm producing. And so he's kind of upset about it, but then they find out that the reality show is also missing a contestant, so the girl goes and she like fills in that spot. And so the whole thing is like, it's a teen reality show to like date a celebrity. It was a really cute book. It was just like a little light and like fluffy summer read. And the next one is Milk and Honey by Ruby Carr. I don't normally like read poetry, but I just picked it up. I was like, okay, like let's just see what like all the hype was about for her. And I really did like it. It was a cute book. Like, well, cute. The poems are really pretty, and it was a lot more emotional than I was expecting. So I gave this one 4 stars. And then I also read another one that was really similar. It's called The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. So it's basically like the same kind of thing as Milk and Honey, but just like another author and like other poems. So I gave this one again 4 stars, and like I said, it was really similar, but they were still like good poems, very enjoyable. Then after those 2, I reread One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. So that one is my favorite thriller of all time. I read it the first time, I gave it 5 stars. And there's not really too much you can say without like spoiling it, but the beginning premise of the book is that 5 students go into detention, and only 4 of them come out because one of them got murdered, and so the other 4 are all murder suspects. I loved it, and I still enjoyed it on this read through, but it was a little less enjoyable only because like I already knew what was going to happen and I knew most of the plot twists. But if you haven't read it before, I think that's like an amazing thriller. Like, I loved it. After that, I read This May End Badly by Samantha Markham. This one was one of my most anticipated books for a really long time. I tried to get an advanced reader copy of it, but I didn't get it. So it waited a little bit, and it was so good. Like, I love that story. There's these 2 kids. There's his name is 3, and then this girl named Doe. They both go to like rival schools. So he goes to like the boys' school, she goes to the girls' school, and the school itself has always had like a really big rivalry, but they like kind of made a rivalry with each other too. She goes and fake dates his cousin to make him sad. That's a great way to like get him back. The only thing is, after fake dating, obviously she like kind of starts to fall for the cousin. But it was such a nice book, and there's a little more that goes on too. It's kind of a spoiler if I tell you what it is, but it does like go into like more like other stuff later on. But for the most part, it was just such a like enjoyable, like entertaining read, and it was just, again, it was like I already had like high expectations for it, but it like crushed those. It was so good. Then these next couple are all like Ali Hazelwood books. So I read, technically there's like a To Love and To Loathe novella that covers like all 3, but I read them separately. So I read Under One Roof, Stuck With You, and Below Zero, and those 3 are all like individual novellas written by Ali Hazelwood. I gave each of these 4 stars. They were all good, but just like with novellas, they're like small books, so you don't really get like the full thing that you might get from like a full book. But for the most part, I did really like them. These, again, like kind of followed the same like Ali Hazelwood structure, just like faster because it was a novella. But I actually really did like enjoy reading all of them. Also by Ali Hazelwood, I read Love Theoretically. So this one, I was really excited for the release. We went into like Half Price Books one day, and I just saw it on the shelf, and I bought it, like didn't even think about it. And it was good. It was good. The only thing is, it's probably my least favorite out of like the like other Hazelwood books. But it wasn't bad. My only thing is that this one was a lot more. The other ones have been like academic romances, so it's about girls who are in STEM and then like their romance and everything like that. So it talks about like STEM, but it's not really like focused on that. Whereas this one was much more like an academia book, and then it had like that romance subplot, but it wasn't necessarily like what it was about, you know? I did enjoy it. It was a nice read, just not one of my favorites, and not the best one that I think Ali has written. Then next I read The K-Pop Confidential by Stephen Lee. This one was good. It followed the story of a K-pop trainee, and like it was nice to like kind of see that perspective, because they don't always have like the best conditions whenever they're like working as like K-pop trainees. So it was like kind of interesting to like see like the whole like behind the scenes kind of view of it. But at the same time, I was a little upset because I'm not like really into K-pop at all, but for some reason the book just like seemed interesting enough. So I picked it up, and I really did enjoy it. But then I found out that it was part of a series, and the book ended with a cliffhanger. So I was really mad because I was like, I actually like this, and then now I like don't even get the full story. So I think there's like 3 left. But the next one I read was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. This one I feel like is the equivalent of like eating a whole like million spoonfuls of sugar. Like it was just such a like fluffy read. I don't know, it was just a very like cute like romance, you know? Childhood best friends to lovers. He's an NFL player. She gets drunk, and then in the bathroom she accidentally like tells a TMZ reporter that like she's in love with Nate. And so the video goes viral. She's like super embarrassed and everything, but it's like really weird. But she mentions a Tide pen. They basically go and like give the 2 of them a contract, and it's like, hey, like if you 2 keep up like a relationship up until the Super Bowl and like film a little Super Bowl commercial for us, then like we'll pay you. So she desperately needs money, so she's like, okay, like, you know, I guess we can fake date until then and just like see. But the fake dates start being a little less fake because the 2 of them have been in love with each other since they were like in high school. Then after that I read Set on You by Amy Lee. So this one, it's an enemies to lovers between a gym influencer and this like random guy who just like goes to the gym. They just like keep trying to like get on each other's nerves, and anyway, it wasn't one of the most like memorable books either, so I only gave this one 3 stars. And then the last book that I read this summer, it's The Lost Sisters. So this is a novella from the Quill Print series by Holly Black. This novella and specifically focuses on Taryn, who I did not like in the series. I actually hated her throughout the whole series. And I read this novella, and I hated her more. The whole book was in Karen's point of view, and she was basically like writing like a letter to her sister, like forgiving herself for like her wrongs, whatever. And it was still like, I mean, not gonna lie, I did enjoy reading it, kind of, because it was just funny, like how comedically terrible Taryn was, but at the same time, it was like definitely a hate read. I think you should read the Cruel Prince series, but you shouldn't necessarily read this book from that series. But yeah, that was every single book that I read this summer. Like I said, it was a pretty like enjoyable reading month. Like, I know this is probably the most I'm ever gonna read throughout the whole year, because like summer's the one time that I don't have like anything else going on, so I can just spend the whole day reading, and it's great. But it's probably not gonna be anything like this as soon as like school starts up or anything like that. But for the most part, it was great because I was able to like, catch up on some books that I had heard of but hadn't really read yet. So I hope you enjoyed literally all of those books, because there were a lot. Make sure to give this a big thumbs up if you like videos like this, and if you want to see more. Your favorite book you read this summer, or your least favorite book. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye! That was the wrong hand. Bye!